CBD gang, we're looking for your weed man van stories. The typical weed man in van has many faces,
Dirtbag Dave,
Dirty Sherry, Scuzzy Sean,
many names,
Long-haired Larry, Greasy Gerald,
Sketchy Eddie, and many different types of vans. But everybody has met him, and everybody has a story. Who turned you on to the power of flower? We want to hear about your first experience with grass, pot, Maui Wowie, bud. Give the show a call at 1-833-CBD-GANG. That's 1-833-223-4264. Tell us your story in 3 minutes or less, and we might play it on the show. Hell, one day we might animate it for our YouTube page. We'll be right back with more from Cole Cheney and the CBD Source podcast.
Hey gang, I'm Cole Cheney, and this is episode 21 of the CBD Source podcast. Coming up on the show, if you've got arthritis or pain in your arms or joints or legs or whatever, and you've been taking CBD or THC to supplement the medications you're already taking because they're just not cutting it, you're not alone, gang. Today we take a trip out to West Nyack, New York to speak to CreakyJoints.org, one of the web's leading support, education, advocacy, and research organizations for people living with arthritis and rheumatic disease, to speak with two researchers who put together an awesome survey about CBD and THC as far as dealing with joint pain and arthritis. But first, I'm going to bring Ryan Weber in. He's our Cannabidiet chef and cameraman and pretty much jack of all trades over here. We're going to talk about the survey that they did among their CreakyJoints.org followers, and we're going to break it down. We're going to break down the numbers before we actually head over to the Creaky Joints office or hospital or wherever they work exactly, and we'll see what's going on with these awesome results. Let's dive right into it.
Gang, you're listening to the CBD Source podcast.
So Ryan and I are heading over to Creaky Joints. If you haven't heard of Creaky Joints, it's like the main message board community for arthritis and people with creaky joints. I mean, it's pretty obvious in the name, I guess.
I have creaky joints.
Maybe you smoke creaky joints. You're too young for creaky joints. Actually not. I mean, some people get arthritis and issues like that when they're really young. The reason we got in contact with them is because they had this study among their users on their website. They wanted to see how many of their users were using CBD or THC on the side to try to remedy their ailments. And I think they were probably pretty surprised by the results they got back. So they made a huge deal out of it. They put a poster together, and they went to Madrid to present this poster of the statistics that they built based on 77 questions that they sent to 1,059 participants. So, Rye, let's go over this, because before we even get there, I want to talk about the different things that they discovered in this survey that they did. So, you want me to start? I see I've got all these statistics here. I think we could break it down, and you could say some, and I'll say some, because it's pretty fucking amazing how this turned out. I mean, it was basically just a random sampling of people that go to their site who have chronic ailments. So let's see what results came out of this. So the survey is called Patient Perceptions of Medical Marijuana and CBD. So we're not just dealing with CBD, we're dealing with THC too. Both apparently can do some good for people with chronic joint issues. So I'm gonna go over some, and then you can hit some. All right?
Sure.
All right. So they started with 1,059 patients. The average age of the patients that participated in this survey was 57, and 57% of those 57-year-olds on average have used marijuana or CBD for a medical reason. 43% have not used marijuana or CBD. So over half of these patients have used, 57%, that's like 6 out of 10 of these patients have used CBD or THC for a medical reason.
Now we have to try to see who's using and how often and why. And that's part of the survey that they have here. 37% of people tried marijuana for medical use. 52% of people tried CBD for medical use.
Oh, wow.
So it's
like almost 20 more.
It shows
like
you people don't want the psychedelics. They want that medical relief.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these are 57-year-old average who are in pain and they're looking for some other way to feel some relief. So it makes sense. They've heard about CBD. That makes sense to try it.
And then 62% of people who regularly use marijuana do so at least once daily. I'm not going to say.
Are you surprised by that?
No, actually, I would think it would be higher.
Well, like more than once daily? Well, especially if you're talking about 57-year-old, that's not retirement age, right? 65 is retirement age. And these are American people who are taking the survey mostly, I would imagine.
I'm just surprised. I believe it would have been at least twice daily or more.
Daily. Well, yeah, else. Is that marijuana or CBD and marijuana?
That one's just strictly marijuana.
Okay. Well, some of them probably have jobs. They don't want to be fucked up at work.
Yeah, tomato. 45% of patients said they started using marijuana or CBD to address symptoms despite taking medication.
Oh, like on top of their meds. That makes sense.
They're pretty much saying, this Tylenol ain't working, so let me try CBD. It's...
See what? People heard about it and they want to test it out. It makes sense.
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, if you're doing something that's not working, but then you see this ways of people saying, "Hey, try this,"
especially
CBD.
People who have like chronic pain, like chronic joint pain, like hands hurting just from every day, just waking up with hurting joints. That's got to be killer. And if what you're taking, especially if what you're prescribed isn't working, and you've heard about CBD or THC as having some benefit, why wouldn't you try it? It makes sense.
Yeah, try whatever you can to...
Exactly. Exactly.
This one is a pretty good statistic here. 97%. 97%.
Holy shit, that's a high Rotten Tomato score. That's certified fresh.
Yeah, straight out the basket. Out the garden.
What is it, though? 97% what?
97% of people who tried marijuana say it improved their symptoms.
Holy shit. Medical marijuana you're talking? Yeah, it's medical
marijuana.
Medical marijuana. Or medical or just
magic marijuana.
They got it somehow.
Not like the Doobie Brothers marijuana down the street. Medical marijuana improved their symptoms. And then here's another high one. 93% of people who used CBD say it improved their symptoms.
Holy shit. See this when I read these statistics the first time, first when I just read about this study that they had done, the statistics weren't all there. There were just a few. And the statistics that they had in this article that I read was like, whoa, shit, I got to get in touch with these people. And when I contacted them, I was like, can you send me the rest of the statistics? Like, I want to know the questions. And the guys who we are going to talk to today were overseas doing that presentation. So one of their assistants sent me a PDF of all of the results. And it said, like, do not publish, can't publish until after this date, because they were presenting it for the first time. Like, we really got the inside scoop on this. So it was really exciting to see these statistics early on.
It's pretty interesting. I'm glad they did this study, because it really opens, the eyes to people that are worried about trying it, especially the older generation.
And, this is a small sampling of a group that's already online. They're interacting. They're talking about their ailments and stuff. So they really don't they're trying to help other people in their community. They have no real reason to lie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, why? Especially because it's an anonymous study. I think it's anonymous. They're filling it all out. It takes a while to fill out these 77 questions to answer all these questions and email it back, or however it was. I think it was an app that they were doing it through. So they're doing it for the benefit of other people who are going through what they're going through and trying to help humanity, Yeah. So, like, I don't see why any of these people would have lied or kind of fudged their numbers when they're trying to have a positive effect on other people who are going through the same shit.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. It also says that top symptoms managed with marijuana and CBD would be pain, inability to sleep, relaxation, depressed moods, nausea, physical functioning, fatigue.
Seems
a
like
handful.
Seems like a lot of different symptoms that these things could possibly do something for. All right, this is one that I'll handle the next section. The section's called Talking to the Doctor. 64% of people who tried marijuana or CBD told their doctor about it. Slightly more than half. So 36% didn't tell their doctor. Why wouldn't you tell them? Well, we'll find out.
I think it's more like a gray area. They're scared still, you know?
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey, I'm smoking weed. Like, what? Okay, well.
Well, we'll find out. There are actually a whole section in here about why they would or would not tell their doctor. 58% of people who did tell their doctor did not receive information on safety, effectiveness, or dosing. So their doctor, even though they told them, was basically no fucking help.
None whatsoever.
Right. Like, we're not going to poo-poo it, but we also have no clue how to tell you if this is good or bad for you. 54% of people wanted to get more information on marijuana and CBD from their doctor. So they wanted it, but maybe it wasn't there to be had. This is why doctors need to get informed about this stuff. This is why, there needs to be more studies about arthritis and CBD and arthritis and THC, so the doctor can actually come at them with science, with studies, and tell them, this is how effective this will be, and this is what you need.
Exactly. If it's helping with other people, then, I mean, it's there. It's helping.
Right.
The fuck. All righty. This section here is reasons for stopping. Dum dum dum.
Oh, like why they stopped CBD or THC? Like both, either?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, let's go.
31% of marijuana users who stopped did so because it wasn't legal where they live, and that's a big issue.
It is. So that's like almost 1 out of 3 people who say they were. 97% of the people who took marijuana said they were benefiting from it in some way. Like, you're taking 1 out of every 3 of those people and cutting off this resource just because they're scared of a legal issue. It's like you figured out a way to do something about this chronic pain, and because of a fucking legal issue in this country, now you're cutting yourself off because of fear, and that's not a good way to live. Give me more. I want more facts. I want more numbers.
But we'll touch base on it. 41% of CBD users who stopped did so because they did not see change in symptoms. Now, that could be because of that 58% of doctors not giving them the dosage. They don't know how much to take to help them.
That's true. It's weird. So let's go back to that first thing. So 93% of people who tried CBD say it improved their symptoms. Of the 7% of people who tried CBD and said it didn't improve their symptoms,
I guess so.
Because if it's 93% effective for people who tried it, that means only 7% said it's not effective, and of that, 41% of the users who stopped did so because they didn't see a change in symptom relief. It's got to be. Because the numbers wouldn't work out otherwise.
The numbers wouldn't work out, or somebody fucking lied. But I mean, it's something we have to ask them when we get there, break it down.
Right.
Figure it out. But let's see, 21% of marijuana users stopped because of the cost. It depends on who your guy is. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
medical
and
use.
what state you're in.
33% of CBD users stopped because of cost.
Quality CBD isn't a cheapo product,
No, it's because it works.
Right.
But I mean, sadly, state to state, one day if insurance ever covers it, see how much more people would be using it or trying it.
No shit. If it was just part of your normal healthcare and you could get CBD prescribed to you or over the counter, like you had the option, and you had healthcare, then that wouldn't be prohibitive.
Canada, eh?
Especially when people are getting older, they're getting qualified for Medicare. Like if Medicare covered CBD and it actually was relieving symptoms that other meds that these people were taking for these different joint and arthritis problems, if it was more effective to take the CBD and they can get it as a prescription, they would.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if it's too expensive because they're having to pay out of pocket and they're close to retirement age, it's tough for some people. Like if you don't have a ton of money set aside for for things like that, incidentals, things to help you feel better in your every day-to-day life, and you're relying on Medicaid or your health care, and this isn't covered, then, for some people, that could be a little bit of a something that might make you not be able to do it. And that sucks. That really sucks.
Yeah, it's sad.
So the last statistics that we have here are health status. So 77% of people who filled the survey out reported they had fair or poor health. 29% of patients were satisfied with their current treatment plan. That's a tiny ass percentage.
It's a little bit. Yeah, it's just a little.
So you can see why, if a lot of people are suffering with these joint and pain issues, and 77% of them aren't getting relief from whatever their doctor's prescribing them or what they're buying over the counter, why they would look other places, why would they would look to, the plant, head towards hemp and cannabis and see, especially, I don't know about you, but my parents, all they talk about is their ailments. That's like all they fucking do. Like once you get to that age, your parents are probably a little younger than mine, but whenever I talk to my parents, all they want to talk about is who's sick, what injuries people have, like how their bodies are all falling apart and stuff. So if anyone in that chain of communication has found a remedy, a natural remedy that is helping them, especially like a THC or CBD remedy in there, they instantly start spreading that shit. Like it's like the craziest version of telephone ever. Like the elderly community will spread anything health related to each other really quickly. And I can see how a lot of these people, over 50%, would have tried something, would have spread out away from the pharmacological recommendations from their doctors and gone more holistic and into the alternative medicines.
I'm surprised to see how many people are open-minded to it, also being that age.
Yeah. I think these are hipper versions of old. There are old people that are really curmudgeon-y and like still stuck in that old like scared of weed ways, but these are all people that are part of an online community. They talk on message boards. Like they're into tech enough to be part of CreakyJoints.org and like actively communicating with other people that have these same problems. So I think they're more willing to take advice from strangers online and go out and try these things. The last statistic they have in this, and I'm going to post this on cbdsourcepodcast.com/21. That's how you can get to it. It'll be right in the show notes of this episode. They have a whole infographic, so like a long infographic that's made for a website from CreakyJoints.org, which is part of the Global Healthy Living Foundation. Top 5 pain conditions participants studied reported. 46% had rheumatoid arthritis. 22% had osteoarthritis. 9% had psoriatic arthritis. 9% had fibromyalgia. Oh, Jesus. 5% had ankylosing spondylitis.
I have that.
Do you?
I don't even know what it is.
Okay.
My ankles hurt.
I wonder if it has something to do with the ankles. Didn't you think Creaky Joints had something to do with actually smoking joints?
I mean, Creaky Joints.
So the average time since diagnosis for the people that were taking the survey was 14 years. So they've been living with their condition for 14 years. And in that time, that's how many people tried THC and CBD to try to treat it. So pretty cool study. So we're heading over to West Nyack now to check out the Creaky Joints guys, Dr. Ben Knoll and Seth Ginsberg.
The CBD Source Podcast. This is how we do's it. How we CB do's it.
CBD Source Podcast. I'm called Cheney. I'm here at the Creaky Joints headquarters. I don't know what this place is amazing, guys, by the way. I'm sitting here with Dr. W. Benjamin Knoll and Seth Ginsberg. You guys came up with this amazing study about patients' perception of medical marijuana and CBD in the arthritis world, I guess, right? So tell me how this even started. Who came up with this?
Sure. So this is Ben Knoll. If I'm thinking back a few years, it actually was Seth who has been saying from the very beginning that we have got to study this topic. And the more we spoke to patients anecdotally and spoke to rheumatologists, we found that there was not a single rheumatologist who had not been asked by one of their patients or many of their patients whether they should be using marijuana for medical use or cannabidiol products, cannabidiol oil, CBD. And yet they have almost no information to guide that discussion with their patients. And similarly, a lot of patients we knew anecdotally were trying these products on their own, either because they didn't feel like they were getting adequate symptom relief from their prescribed medications or over-the-counter products that they were taking, or out of curiosity. And we know as these things became more widespread, less stigmatized, medical marijuana and recreational marijuana became legalized in some states, that this was becoming an increasingly important issue, where science is really behind the public use of these products. So we wanted to just learn within the community of patients that follow us with CreakyJoints that we have within also our patient research registry, Arthritis Power. We wanted to get a sense of how many people had tried these products, quantify that a bit, and also what some of their perceptions were and experiences were with those products.
Yeah, and from the results of this study, it's pretty amazing. I've been going over it, and man, I'm really impressed and not surprised. I'm not surprised. I want to go through some of the questions with you guys. I want to really break this down, go through what the results were, because how many people were in the survey?
So a total more than 1,000 patients participated. So 1,059. The sample size, it should be noted early on, it's not a nationally representative sample. So we can't make claims about the general population. It's really just restricted to the people who follow us, our CreakyJoints community. But because it was a mostly female group, mostly white group, I think 88% were women, 92% white. Almost half of them, I think 46%, had reported a physician diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. So it represents at least that sampling frame within our own community, but it's not representative of all arthritis patients across the country.
Right. I think I saw there were like 5 different types of arthritis or something, or 5 different types of ailments that were sort of like pain related with joints. And what were they? Yeah,
so the people who participated in the survey actually represent a pretty wide range of conditions. RA just seemed to be the most common of them. There are other forms of arthritis, of course, so osteoarthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis. So beyond the sort of inflammatory arthritis or osteoarthritis, some people who have lupus also took the survey. So there were a bunch of different diagnoses that were represented in the survey. What I think you might be referring to is actually the kinds of symptoms that patients sought to relieve when they were trying these products. Pain was by far the most common, and then sleep disturbance or trouble sleeping was the second most common.
And this is Seth Ginsberg, and I'm happy to be talking about this today because it represents just a glimpse into the thirst for more information and certainly more data and evidence-based knowledge on the subject. And the results are one thing. I think the response by our community is another, and I think a equally strong indicator that obviously we're onto something. to have a survey that was fielded in a very short amount of time, to net over 1,000 patients to opt in to take what wound up being a quite lengthy survey, 77 questions.
Sure, that's a long
item study. About a half hour, I think it took folks. I think is a really good indication that it's an important subject and it's important to patients. And the reason that I'm happy that we are embarking on this and that this first study obviously begs additional studies is that it's 100% patient-centered. This study was born out of our patient governor group, which is the body that oversees our research activities, a group of patients themselves. They drafted the first iteration of the study. I mean, and literally it was because of the interest in the patients that we undertook this project with no outside funding, no sponsor. This was an organizationally funded initiative because, again, it speaks to the importance to A, fulfill the knowledge gap that exists, and B, explore all of the areas where much more rigorous and medically oriented studies need to exist. This is, and I just want to note for folks listening, this is a cross-sectional, which means we asked people a whole bunch of questions once. Observational, which means we asked people basically how they were doing and what their answers were based on how they felt and what they thought. Study, and that was it. This is dramatically different than a, say, clinical trial or randomized clinical study that is a test or an intervention of something's effectiveness, a drug or a compound's effectiveness. So what we're talking about today is a survey, questioning people's perceptions and experiences thus far to date as they report it to us in this survey. And what we need and where we're going in the future and what the world needs a lot more of is a protocoled medical and clinical interventional set of studies like these randomized clinical trials that can help us to really understand, and measure in a standardized way what the impact of these interventions, these medicines or these compounds are on patients' actual health. Because everything we know today and everything we're going to talk about now is via their perspectives and their answers to these questions. And so I just want to kind of put that into context because it's almost like, I could put differently. We're talking about not the tip of an iceberg, but like a snowball on top of the tip of the iceberg of when it comes to research.
It's sad that we're at this place where you're getting the results. I mean, when we start talking about the results of this survey, it's astronomical. It almost, to me, it's like, wow, that is fucking ironclad in a way, in a lot of ways. But basically, the gist of the survey is you sent these 77 questions out to a lot of your site's users. Was it anonymous?
It was anonymous.
It was, because I was wondering about that, because they answered so candidly. Like, they answered stuff that's illegal stuff. Like, they're saying, like, I did not tell my doctor that I smoked weed. I did not tell my doctor that I was doing, different things. And they're answering honestly. And this is the kind of thing that if you're suffering at home, if you, gang, are suffering listening to this, and you're suffering from one of these ailments, this is the kind of thing that you're hearing the actual, like, real testimonials of other people going through the same stuff, and they tried these things, and this is why they worked for them.
And I would be cautious to extrapolate too much from those kinds of results, because it is very it's very testimonial based, right? So it's just in the same way that we should always be cautious when we watch any advertising and it's one person saying this product was great for me. I put this cream on my skin and it cleared up my acne. That's just one person's, experience of a particular product. So that's, in some ways, it's similar to what we're hearing from the patients in this study, because they were a self-selected group. So the study has a lot of limitations. I think that's what the point Seth is making, is that what we really need are good, and the point I think you're making
bigger studies,
exactly.
more and more stories,
bigger, more scientifically rigorous studies that actually can measure whether there's any efficacy, whether these products actually work for people to improve their pain, improve their sleep, which are the two big reasons that people were trying these products, because we don't know that for sure. I was looking, there's a great resource that's free and available online to everyone called the Cochrane Collaboration website, and they have evidence summaries. So Cochrane spelled Cochrane. And they actually, if you type in the evidence summaries, type in cannabidiol or CBD, it will pull up reviews of all of the studies that have been done that meet certain evidentiary criteria, the standards for research, to talk about the effectiveness of certain products. And so there have been studies done in neuropathic pain, studies done in ulcerative colitis, for example. But the evidence, at least ulcerative colitis, which is probably in some ways most similar to the kinds of conditions that we looked at in our study, inflammatory autoimmune conditions, the study's inconclusive. You can't draw, we're not able yet to draw for CBD, at least, any firm conclusions. So I think what we can say from this study, and I think the point that Seth is making too, is that we know that there's a lot of interest in this topic. We know that patients are using these products, and as you said, also in some cases telling their doctor, in some cases they're not. And in the cases, a lot of people were actually sharing that information with their doctor or asking their doctor about it. But the problem is the doctor doesn't really have any good scientific evidence to help frame what they should say to patients about these products, whether they should recommend it, if there's a particular dose, is there a particular frequency, is there an interaction with the prescribed medications that the doctor has them on. So what we really need, the limitations like selection bias from this study, where people are voluntarily choosing to disclose this information, they're volunteering to take this study, is definitely going to be a different population of patients than if you're just randomly asking people off the street. So what we need to do is a study where we have people in a blinded randomized control trial. Some people are getting a product that we want to test, like CBD oil or capsules, for example, against a placebo or a capsule that has no product in it whatsoever, and have patients have no idea which one that they're actually on, and compare the symptoms over time from those two treatment arms at a minimum, and maybe we test different doses, for example.
Right.
So that's the kind of work that we need to do next.
The thing is, what did these people have to gain by lying? Like, what would they have had to gain? It seems like they're being honest to how these medicines actually affected them.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think any of them are lying in this study. I don't think that's the case at all. But I think there's the placebo effect when you believe that something that you take is working to change your symptoms. Because I think one of the most striking findings of this study was that more than 90% of patients said, yes, this CBD or this medical marijuana improved my pain or improved my symptoms, generally, or improved, they perceived that it improved their condition. That's really just a patient perception based on an uncontrolled environment. So they're not lying, but the perception is reality in this case. And so what you need is to be able to say, like, you don't know, you could be taking just a sugar tablet, right? Or you could be taking something that has a real product or chemical in it, and then measuring over time whether or not it makes a difference. And that we don't have, and that we cannot claim from this product. So there's nothing in this, I think, beyond sort of patient testimonials about their own use that we can make claims about the effectiveness of these products.
A couple episodes ago, we had Dr. Bonnie Goldstein on, who was one of the doctors in the documentary Weed the People. And I was talking to her about that, and she was saying that, like, there's placebo effect, and then there's things where you have a nonverbal child who is going through some kind of crazy cancer or epilepsy, like a crazy version of epilepsy. And they're injecting things into this kid's stomach all day, different stuff. the kid doesn't know if it's the 10th seizure medication they're trying, if it's cannabis or what it is. But when they did the cannabis and it worked, it's not a placebo effect. The kid can't say don't put that in me. He doesn't know what's going into him or her. So when you're getting something like that, there's no faking it. There's no like thinking because this is cannabis, I'm going to react a different way. That is like proof going into a body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fun fact, early generations.
I love fun facts.
Early generations of arthritis medicines were trialed in horses. Because for that very reason, if a horse was limping from arthritis and then the treatment started and it stopped limping, that drug worked.
That's a good way to do it.
If it didn't, they weren't, they knew either way it didn't,
that makes sense.
Communicating it. So yeah, I think that it's of note that to Ben's point, without this randomization and blinding in terms of a control arm, and then an interventional arm, there really is no good scientific evidence, especially that the medical community, the medical professionals whose jobs it is and who take the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, who require this kind of data. Without that, they're at a loss.
How do we go about doing it, though? That's the thing.
So here's the challenge. Everything we're talking about, doing these kinds of randomized clinical studies and interventions, are very expensive because you need to do them with a protocol, with a process that is extremely rigorous, that is extremely standardized, that meets requirements of regulatory bodies like the FDA, Food and Drug Administration.
Right.
And so to do that, you need clinical investigators, they're called. This is basically a doctor and their office that administers either the interventional drug or the control arm placebo. And that doctor usually has or needs a study coordinator, a full-time staff member. There's a length of time involved. This could be over, quite a lengthy period of time. And so all of these things compound into very costly line items. I mean, they become very expensive and unwieldy. In the traditional biopharmaceutical industry, for example, there is a research and development arm that's clearly an investment, a heavy investment made by manufacturers, and they pay for this. They literally engage financially with trialists, they're called, clinical investigators, and they pay for the program. It's called a program, usually. And so there is right now we're at this very interesting intersection of policy, regulation, commerce, and society, like and just a political will or societal will. And it's not necessarily an aligned intersection, but these are the kind of four forces at work right now. And without a commerce or capitalist really drive for a company to be required to do this, say, not just for superiority, but for safety. If the regulatory quadrant of this discussion, if the Food and Drug Administration tomorrow required studies like we're talking about that would show safety and efficacy, and they therefore regulated it, A, it would put most companies out of business, and B, it would become an arms race for those that could stay in business to get those studies done and funded, and it would create the dynamic that would force the capital investment and the commerce and capitalist drive to accomplish it. But it would effectively, by having such a high bar, it would actually spawn the business to have the will to overcome it. But without that, and that is so far from reality today, I mean, without that hypothetical situation, there's just no financial reason to do these studies as our marketplace, regulatory environment, and policy currently exists in the U.S.
And as Seth mentioned earlier, this was purely a one-time survey, cross-sectional,
Right.
We're not following patients over time when they're taking these products. So another limitation I should point out is that the patient responses are prone to what we call recall bias, in terms of thinking back on their experience and remembering what that was like. So it's more impressionistic. Like, I have an overall impression that this product worked for me, but to truly get good data about that, we have to do some of the things that Seth and I are both suggesting, like a randomized control trial where you have a really controlled dose of a product and you're following patients over time. And this was a descriptive study, which is helpful because you get a sense of like what patients are saying about it, what their perceptions are. But we don't, like to Seth's point, we don't know for sure.
Are doctors like legally able to do that? I don't think we can do that yet, right? How would you get a test, like an actual like product that you can use? I think they can't just go and buy product that has to be like government like conditioned. It has to be like grown in a government farm or something like that.
For marijuana, yes.
Yeah.
CBD.
But not CBD.
Correct. CBD, as I understand, is legal in its pure format. I think FDA takes issue, rightfully so, with CBD within edible food and other supplements. So yes, I think that technically, just as a doctor could initiate a study about toenail fungus, and a miracle cure for that. If it's, a combination of vinegar and whatever else, that would be acceptable. But again, there's just no financial incentive to do that. And so back to Ben's, point, I want to revise my analogy. This study is more like a snowflake on the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the research that exists and needs to be conducted on the subject.
Well, hopefully when people start seeing this survey that you guys did, it'll be like the snowflake that starts to roll down and build momentum. Yeah, build up more and more snow until eventually it's massive. It's formed another iceberg of its own.
That's
or something.
The plan.
Yeah.
TheCBDGang.com, the official subreddit for fans of the CBD Source podcast. Questions, answers, CBD gangsters, and karma. That's sweet karma.
We're back with the CBD Source podcast.
I think there's a lot of commercial opportunity in the future because from what I can see, that seems like there's a lot of people who are in the business of manufacturing or selling, purveying products that have CBD, or claim to have CBD in them. But because it's such an unregulated environment, this creates a problem where people can really make any claims they want in a testimonial fashion. And there are plenty of people who will buy it, who will believe the testimonial and buy the product. But it's not, in the absence of safety and efficacy studies, it's not clear. It's basically akin to snake oil. So, for example, I wandered into a sort of local artisans shop in my neighborhood. They had like a pop-up store with candles and jewelry and pottery, and it's awesome. I mean, I definitely went home with a candle from that. But one of the booths, the guy was selling CBD products, and one of the items was this a beard oil with CBD, and he's like, oh, you'll feel great. And who knows? I mean, maybe that's true. The vapors from the CBD will go in my nostrils if I rub this on my beard, and then I'll feel a sense of relaxation and calm. I'm not going to claim that will not happen, but I have no proof that there's even that particular ingredient in a sufficient dose in that product, or whether or not it actually works. So I think that's the environment we're in right now, is where there's a lot of people wanting to believe and wanting to sell these products. But what we really need, what all of us need, patients, especially, is some kind of information, like good information that tells us what to believe, what to believe, what to do. Because that's the whole point of research. At least one of the biggest points from my perspective is that it helps people make better healthcare decisions, better decisions about where to spend their money, where to spend their time, what to do to improve their health and feel better.
And it also helps doctors to be able to recommend things. If there's no actual concrete studies out there, no concrete science, it makes it a lot harder for doctors that are wanting to recommend this to a patient to say, like, this is a good dose for this ailment. You need to add these terpenes to this and these flavonoids and this amount of THC compared to this amount of CBD and all that stuff. Like, if you don't know that, then how the hell are you supposed to recommend it? And another thing.
And then to whom? Sorry. I mean, and what source of that? Because without a regulatory environment to protect the consumer, as Ben mentioned, this is America. People have been known to do horrible things,
right?
With an uninformed consumer. And I think that as an organization, so CreakyJoints is the online patient community for people with arthritis. That's a part of the nonprofit Global Healthy Living Foundation, or GHLF. We're a nearly 20-year-old patient advocacy organization, and we represent people with chronic diseases. And our mission is to improve access to care for a healthier life. And so we have grave concerns right now that with an unregulated environment for CBD in this case, the consumer, the patients, our society, people are at risk from companies that have no bar to meet, no requirement or standardization for quality, for safety, for efficacy, or any of the claims that are being made. And far be it for me to use a Latin phrase ever after ninth grade Latin class, but, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Mm-hmm. And, our concern is for, most importantly, those with chronic conditions who are actively seeking relief, right? That's who we care most about. And these are among the most vulnerable people in our society. And these are people who are, rightfully so in dire need of relief. And so for them to, be misled or, ill-informed, and there to be no protections and safety and guardrails around how businesses can do business or what products can contain what. It's a really important subject, and it's kind of like we have to first deal with that as a country, as a U.S. From a regulatory standpoint, and we have to do that responsibly. And fortunately, the Food and Drug Administration is actively seeking the public's response and feedback to this very subject, as you probably
they're working
aware.
on it. I did 2 episodes about the FDA public hearing.
Excellent.
Watched the whole thing and broke it down. Because it's a huge thing. And one thing we talk about a lot on the show is, like, as a public consumer that is looking to experiment with CBD or see how it would work for them, like, make sure you do the research, like, check lab results, like, try to find out where they're getting it, where they're sourcing their CBD from, what's in it, like what the solvents are, that sort of thing. And you can find that online if it's a reputable company. If it's a company making claims, like outrageous claims that this is going to do miraculous stuff for you, don't buy that, because the FDA cracks down on that kind of thing, because you're making claims just out of thin air. It is snake oil in that case, and it's not going to live up to whatever kind of bullshit they're trying to spew at you. So yeah, definitely always check lab results, see what see that you're buying quality stuff. And it's the worst when someone buys a piece of shit CBD that's not CBD, or like has very little CBD in it. It doesn't work for them. And then it just discourages them. And then they shit on CBD and they say, this is garbage. And they tell their friends it's garbage, and they never try it again. That's not good for the industry. Someone made a quick buck off of them, maybe even had some like synthetic something in there to make them feel like they were getting high or getting something out of it. And it's not real. And then they go away with that experience, and they're like,
So we call that the dog bite syndrome.
Okay.
And that's actually a bigger issue for marijuana. And what that means is, if a dog bit you as a little kid, you're going to be afraid of dogs forever.
Right.
And there's just no way you're going to get comfortable around a dog as an adult or afterwards. And the same thing, if you were growing up in the 60s and 70s or whenever, and you had some crappy pot, you're off a pot. You're not going near pot. And you project a negative thought and feelings towards marijuana in that case.
And hemp.
Like
you'd make that same leap because it looks the same, it smells the same. Like people who had those bad pot experiences now think the same about CBD when they see it or smell it or whatever. It's weird how that leap, it's there though. Like the first thing people see when they see like raw flower or something is like, is this going to get me high? Like I don't want to, I can't do that. I don't want it showing up on drug tests, all this stuff. Like people freak out about CBD because they just don't know much about it at all.
And I think we have to better understand too, in what amount and for whom are these products safe and appropriate and effective. I think just recently at a conference, the European Congress on Rheumatology, they had a whole session on this topic of, I think it was specifically on medical marijuana, THC.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's related, but it's that was the major message, was that never, ever would a doctor recommend as a first line treatment something like medical marijuana with the evidence that's out there now. And so I'm sure, that you could extrapolate, safely to CBD because it's been even less studied. So I think that's the kind of stuff we just don't know the answer to those questions. And
it's so sad.
It is sad. And
it's just such on a ground level. Like it
is, and it will. I mean, I think it'll get there. And that was the point of doing this survey, is to try to nudge, to put some information out there, to nudge people in a sense, a sort of an advocacy to say, look, the reality is people are trying these products, whether or not there's evidence to use them. Is that really where we want people spending their money and their time? Wouldn't it be better if they were, following the sort of doctor's prescribed treatment as opposed to branching out? And I mean, we don't know the answer to those questions. But to bring it back to the study that we did, I mean, we know that a lot of folks, at least in our sample of 1,000 patients, more than 1,000 patients, 77% of them, so more than 3/4 of them, were reported poor health or fair health, right? So they're not feeling great. So already you got 3/4 of these people who are not feeling very good. Less than a third, only 29% of the folks in our study were satisfied with their current treatment regimen.
Right.
And so it's not that surprising that they would seek other ways to try to feel better, try other things, look what I've been on, this prescribed treatment. And actually 67% had been on that treatment regimen for more than a year. So they're potentially looking for other things that might help them feel better. So I think if nothing else, the survey tells us, the findings of the survey say that there's definitely people out there who are not feeling great, for whom whatever their current treatment plan is, it's not working, or the patient doesn't perceive it to be working well at all for them. And they're looking for other things that might help them deal with some of the symptoms like pain,
right,
sleep disturbance, that were highlighted in the results.
We've been burying the lead. I want to get into the numbers of this survey. You know what I mean? Because some of these numbers are pretty insane. As far as like how. Can we start to talk about some of the numbers? Like
you're really into the numbers.
I really am, because it's exciting to me, because that numbers I can understand. I can say, like, of these people who were surveyed, this is what the results are.
Have at it.
So do you have like, can we go over some of it? I want to break down like some of how it came out.
They're all ones and zeros. Just kidding.
But one of the other things that got to me was this top 10 reasons for stopping medical marijuana and CBD.
I think that's really interesting too.
So that blew my mind.
The number one reason people stopped or reported that they stopped taking medical marijuana was because it's not legal in the state where they live or the jurisdiction where they live.
What I was amazed by was these top 10 reasons, like 6 of them are legal things. Like I was looking at it. So it's like, it's not legal in the state where I live. Number one reason. The cost of using it was more than I wanted to spend. If it was a government regulated drug in a way, they'd be getting it in their healthcare. It wouldn't be a cost issue. You know, that's a legal thing to me.
It might have like a really high copay, but yeah. Go ahead.
Right. I had difficulty getting it. Again, you know, it's hard to get because it's illegal in a lot of states. Probably falls under the same umbrella. I was concerned that I would have periodic or random drug testing at my job. That's a huge one. You know, people are freaked out by that. Losing their job, losing their insurance, that kind of thing. There's no good information about appropriate use and dose.
We're definitely interested in advancing the studies in this area. But I think that when we have talked to other people, other scientists around the country or outside of the country, other research organizations, that definitely comes up as a big barrier. Even in France, the Netherlands, it's not it's not as straightforward or easy as we might think it is. So
it seems like Israel's the place right now.
Is
like
that right?
Israel is on top of this.
So I don't know about that, but I do know. I do know that that's what is needed. Is we want to be able to study these products in a U.S. population and better provide evidence, better provide information that patients are going to find useful to guide their healthcare decisions.
I totally agree. The more studies, the better. I'm all about it. Like, I think that they should do as wide a net as possible, especially when you're focused on one specific thing like arthritis, and just be like, let's figure this fucking out. You know, like, let's figure out if it's really working or not, you know?
I say that every day around here.
But what percentage of people said that they have tried them and then it's done something positive for them?
Let's see. So of the folks who said, well, hold on, you're turning me to my numbers again.
Cool.
The 37% of the people in our study had tried medical marijuana, and 52% had tried CBD. So among those percentages, those breakdowns, more than 90% of each of those groups basically had said that that the product improved their pain or improved their condition, or improved in some cases their sleep. So a lot of people, but again, with the big caution that interpret this very carefully, because these are people who are self-selecting to participate in the study. There's a placebo effect. So if I believe there's a strong component in healthcare in general about believing something will work. And so that could be what's being measured here, as opposed to the actual product itself. So there's what they call confounding variables in studies. And so a randomized controlled trial, which is what we're suggesting, would be an excellent next step, a blinded randomized controlled trial. That's the kind of thing that you need to eliminate the bias that you get from confounding variables. So other components that are going to, may account for the effect that you're seeing. So at this point, these are just a lot of people saying that, they perceived some kind of a difference as a result of these products, but we don't know for sure that that's what's actually making the difference.
So are you guys pushing to create these studies for yourselves? Like, is your organization like out looking for funding and trying to like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking for both partners, people who are reliable, reputable, credible partners, and sure, I mean, ultimately, to do any research, funding is necessary to do it correctly and do it well. So stay tuned, because we're it's something that we're working on. We work on studies all the time, but this is a relatively it's a new area in general, and it's something that we're hoping that the results from the study will add to our advocacy that this is something that needs to be studied, and that we're in a position to help facilitate those kinds of studies.
What was your reception when you took this to Madrid, right? Recently, you went to Spain and presented this infographic that you had made showing the results of the survey. What was the reaction from everybody? There
was definitely a lot of interest. Kelly Gavigan, the lead author on the abstract and poster, and myself were standing at the poster all day. We got a lot of traffic from other researchers around the world interested in this topic. And they pointed out, as we did, the limitations of the study, recall bias, selection bias, and so on, and the fact that it's just a descriptive study. But they also emphasize the fact that it's an important topic that needs to be looked at, and it's important to get some information out, even if it's a descriptive study that just has patient perceptions, that starts the ball rolling. They also said, as I mentioned before, folks from European countries like France or the Netherlands said that even in their own countries, it's not easy to study this topic or to conduct a trial. But everyone, I think, uniformly agrees that's what is needed to really generate some good data for people living with arthritis or related conditions to guide their healthcare decision-making vis-a-vis these kinds of products.
You know, it's amazing just talking about this with you guys. I'm picturing 5-10 years in the future, and this podcast will be just an archived thing. And when people listen to it, they'll be like, holy shit, remember when we couldn't do those studies or those didn't exist? And now things have changed so drastically, and people who are living with arthritis are having much improved lives because of studies that you guys had started, you know, the infant phases of. It's kind of cool that we can be talking about it now, and it's all hypothetical and, you know, hopeful. And then all it takes is one billionaire who has arthritis and smoked a bunch of weed one day and like put some balm on parts of his body and was like, whoa, what's going on here?
So if that person's out there, you can reach us at
right. Yeah, exactly.
CreakyJoints.org.
Yes. To get in touch with these guys, we can get this rolling.
Sure.
But I just want to, when you're addressing people like that who are curious about CBD and they have arthritis, they're looking for some kind of help. You know, they're looking to get rid of these pains that the medication, obviously from your survey, these people have been on something for a year and they're still feeling that it's not working, you know, effectively enough. So they're out buying things at, you know, fucking bodegas or wherever they're trying to find CBD. What kind of advice or what kind of, I don't know, what would you have to say to these people that, how can we direct them or something?
How can we help you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, that's a great question. And I think the answer is twofold. One, be careful. I think that's really important advice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And so one has to take extra caution when going down the road of taking any kind of supplement or experimenting with anything for that matter. And the second, I think, related piece of advice is to talk to your doctor. The exclusion of your doctor in this discussion is a net negative thing. I mean, it is just not a good idea.
I agree totally.
And two things. One, doctors are human too. So there's that. And two, they have to understand the total picture when treating you, when talking and working and helping you either manage a condition, a chronic disease, or just to get or stay healthy. And if you withhold this kind of information that you, whatever it is, if you smoke pot, if you vaporize THC, if you take CBD, if you use the beard oil twice a day, whatever it is, I think that to withhold that kind of information, I think would be to your detriment. And you're almost certainly to get the response from your doctor that we've been talking about. You know, most reasonable physicians will say, I'd love to help you here. I got nothing to go on.
Right.
There's nothing in the literature.
There's
no guidelines, but good to know. And then
there are also some doctors that are like, I can't have you as a patient anymore.
And you know what? Then that's definitely not your doctor.
Right.
That's not a good fit for you, because you know, you're almost certainly to spawn a related discussion that is so important to have. And, you know, that could go in a lot of directions about, you know, responsible use, for example. You know, well, okay, you know, I'd like to think there are doctors out there reminding people who share that they smoke pot, for example, they take THC in any other way, that they shouldn't drive, you know, while impaired. You know, those kinds of things, I think is just general wellness discussion topics. And then there are co-conditions and there are unintended medical effects that also need to be discussed. Certain types of people with certain medical conditions should not, A, smoke pot, for example, if you're, susceptible or prone to or have COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or any other, lung issue for that matter, combusting anything is not a good idea,
right.
and that dialogue could ensue if one brought it to their...
A doctor could be like, well, you should go with edibles or tinctures, other routes that aren't directly harming your lungs. I mean, that's
random example, but and there are, just... If you can explain, I think another good, hopeful, likely discussion topic from your doctor is, well, why? What are you medicating? Right. Mm-hmm. And if it's, I can't sleep at night, insomnia. Well, that's a discussion you should be having with your doctor at the most basic level. Right. Now that you're discussing, you can't sleep at night, and you can begin to understand perhaps why.
It's a side effect of one of the other meds you have me on, Doc.
Could be, but it begets additional conversation, and I think that's a really important place to go when you're medicating or self-medicating with these agents, with these supplements, and with these drugs, because and the conversation I have with doctors. And your point earlier about, the reception we got in Madrid at this medical congress was, it's like, hey guys, docs, it's like, don't you want to know what your patients are doing when they leave your office? Like, Isn't that like necessary information to have about your patient to treat that whole person,
right?
And not just the biology of their specific disease? And they virtually all agreed, and they totally, are bought into at least the discussion, disclosure, and communication gap that needs to be closed between a doctor and a patient. Mm-hmm. And this applies to a lot of things, but I think it's extra special, and it's very important too, because I think it was about a third of folks, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but as I recall, about a third of folks don't report this to they're used to their doctor.
A lot don't.
And that means 1 out of 3. And that's not cool.
But that's some fear, man. Like,
of course.
You're afraid of losing that. You're afraid of losing the doctor. You're afraid of, do they have to report me to the police if I tell them this information?
Short answer is no.
Right.
And your patient privacy is really, really, huge here. I mean, it's well regarded, touch wood, and it's something that is, as the United States takes very seriously what's called HIPAA, which was a law, I believe passed in the 90s. It stands for something that Health Information Portability Privacy Act. That's my guess. Mm-hmm. But I think there might be an A in there, so don't quote me. Anyway, HIPAA is a common term now that basically means your patient privacy. And so what you tell to your doctor is really safe. What you tell to your doctor is really, I think, is kept very, is kept secure. There are very few exceptions, and they're good ones. If you talk to your doctor about suicidal or homicidal thoughts,
right,
your doctor has an obligation to deal with that,
right,
take action.
But because then you're doing harm, and they have a do no harm,
clearly.
Right.
And but really beyond that, there really aren't too many other examples where your doctor's gonna leave your consult and pick up the phone and call somebody, especially in this area,
right?
So, and then, then there's the complete other side of the discussion, and that's around, life insurance, and other kinds of insurance where
losing your health insurance, that sort of thing.
People, have a pretty good reason to be cautious in who they disclose what to, for that reason. But we as an organization feel strongly that, total disclosure is a must, especially to your healthcare professionals, your medical professional team. And having that conversation is a necessary component to better health, because if you don't disclose everything, you can't expect anything.
Wow, that's powerful. And it's funny because no, it's not funny, but it's real. And I think a lot of people out there, this might be common knowledge to you, but a lot of people out there, this is not common knowledge. They think that a doctor would have to report if they told them they did something illegal drug wise, or that it could fuck up their insurance, or they might lose their doctor. Like, it's good to know this information. I'm glad that you're getting this out there, because really the doctor wants to know all the different things that are going on in your life to be able to treat you the right, to know how to treat you and why things are happening to you and why things aren't happening to you. So definitely if you are indulging in the THC side or CBD side, you should let them know. Just like if you're trying to self-medicate because you have major pains in your legs or something, you're taking, many more Advil a day than you should be taking, or if you're taking too much Tylenol a day because you're trying to cover for something else that's hurting you.
Especially in the over-the-counter self-care medication, the things you just mentioned, Advil, Tylenol, extremely important to communicate very clearly with your doctor how much of those types of medicines you take and how frequently. We all have aches and pains. We all have reasons to take an Advil, a Tylenol, etc. However, to your point, you got a liver issue,
right,
and you have a stomach issue, and both of those critical organs are at very high risk when those two specific over-the-counter medicines are taken in high dosing and high quantities over even as few as 7-day period of time. And so this is just a topic of interest to us as an organization. Obviously, when you call it, your group CreakyJoints, this is your area of specialty. And when it comes to self-care and over-the-counter consumer medicines for the treatment of it, we have lots and lots of information on CreakyJoints.org about what's called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs.
Right, okay.
That's Advil.
Mm-hmm, all right.
Acetaminophen is Tylenol. And these are very often unintentionally misused and lead to very horrible things that the patients undergo.
You wouldn't think Tylenol could kill you, but it really can if you take too much of it.
Right. Well, I mean, there's that. And then there's just the plain fact that if your doctor or even just your pharmacist, and just a quick plug for the pharmacist, that's like this random healthcare professional on your team that you almost certainly don't get the most out of because you just deal with them for maybe a prior authorization. They fill your allergy medicine or whatever, and you're on your way. Meanwhile, this is someone who's also called a doctor, if you're a pharmacist, a PharmD, and has a pharmacologic understanding of the biology of these diseases and their treatments that far outstrips anyone else on your medical team, your healthcare professional team. And they're available, and it's, a simple consult to say, hey, I just want to, run this by you. And it's something we actively encourage people to do in general. But, we've got on a tangent here about OTC medicines like Tylenol and Advil.
Right.
And again, that's someone you'd want to consult with about that. But to bring it back to today's topic, I think that the reason disclosure and the reason talking about your THC or CBD use with your doctor is so important is because you have to talk about those symptoms, and then you have to understand their causes, and you have to explore together how to manage, if not prevent, those symptoms from happening. It could be, there could just be a different root cause of that pain. That could be a physical issue that might, a simple surgery could correct, for example.
Right.
That without any of that knowledge or discussion or understanding, you'd continue to address the symptoms and
just putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound type of thing. Yeah.
And so, going upstream, as they say, and figuring out like the cause of things and what's going on, I think is generally the best medical conceptual advice we can give, but it all comes down to the way to do that is by talking to your doctor.
So outside of like CreakyJoints, just on a personal level, just you talking to Seth, what do you think about like how medical marijuana works and just with arthritis and things like that? Like outside of this survey and stuff, like have you personally talked to people who have arthritis and fibromyalgia and all these other related things? What kind of just personal stories have you heard and things like that?
Well, I have in my kind of heart statement my doctor made to me when I was a kid. I was diagnosed with arthritis when I was 13, and I was probably around that age, maybe 14, 15, when I'll never forget having a conversation with my doctor. And I just said, what about trying other stuff? And I'll never forget, he said, look, if you came and told me that putting 2 tablespoons of peanut butter on your knees every morning made you feel better, I would say go out and get a case of peanut butter.
So America, we need more guys like Seth here, more groups that are specifically about one niche subject that want to test CBD and THC and see how it works. Like if enough of you guys start like building this idea of we need to do a test just specifically on this one thing, they'll be popping up all over the place. And the next thing you know, these tests will actually happen and you'll get the funding. The funding will come once enough of an outcry is out there to say, like, we need to see what the efficacy of CBD and THC is on rheumatoid arthritis or brain tumors or whatever, all these different things. So I'm glad that you guys have launched this, and hopefully this is just like the first of many snowflakes that build that iceberg into a some kind of glacial, like you're rebuilding the North Pole or something.
Yeah, no, I'm down. And I appreciate that. Thanks for the compliment. And I totally agree. And I want to encourage folks listening. I mean, obviously this is an important subject, and we've got a lot about it on our website as it relates to arthritis and pain and such. That's CreakyJoints, CreakyJoints.org. The tool, the app that we use to do this study, where we have lots of other research initiatives underway right now, is called Arthritis Power. That's a free app as well, arthritispower.org. And I'm just grateful to be surrounded by amazing rock stars here at the Global Healthy Living Foundation, pushing forward to advocate for better health and a happier life for people living with chronic conditions.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you having me, and thanks for the question.
Very cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome.
Hey gang, want to score free CBD? Sign up for Loyal and Save online or on your phone and use it whenever you shop at CBD Source locations. You'll earn points towards free products and other cool merch. Sign up for free at cbdsourcepodcast.com/loyal. You can download the Loyal and Save app on iTunes or Google Play. That's our loyalty app. Call Help designed it. Making your commute a little less stressful. The CBD Source Podcast. The CBD Source Podcast. This is how we CB-do's it.
Well, Rye, that was fun hanging out with the CreakyJoints guys. Anyone who's listening to this who just stumbled on this because of the CreakyJoints.org guys, welcome to the podcast. This is the CBD Source Podcast. We're all about CBD, spreading the word of the ways CBD can possibly work for you through other people's stories, real life testimonials, and doctors talking about their experience with patients. Man, they had the coolest, like Professor Xavier's mansion.
Yeah, they did.
It was like, I didn't know what we were getting into. Like we thought maybe it's going to be like a hospital or doctor's office or something. But when we pulled up, man, they have this immaculate, huge mansion. And we walked in. Now everyone in there was walking. Everyone had a job. They were all walking around. Like it was like a real house that it was converted into an exploratory workspace for these guys who were doing research about arthritis and maintaining the website and maintaining their app and all this stuff. But like every room, everywhere you walked, were little offices with people in there working. Everywhere.
No idea what the hell they did.
Yeah, I don't.
But I mean, it was a nice.
It was
nice
beautiful.
House, beautiful view.
Yeah, it was beautiful. There was a beautiful view of the Hudson River down a hill, I guess. And I mean, this huge property. I think Seth told me that Rosie O'Donnell lived just below just like down the hill from them towards the river.
Yeah, a little diagonal through the backyard.
Yeah, like
crazy.
This is where a lot of celebrities and millionaires and billionaires live, I guess.
I'll never live there.
Who knows, man? If the podcast keeps continuing to grow like it is now, dream big, dude.
The gang's all here. The CBD gang.
And yeah, they were really nice. And we set up right in their library and did the whole thing. We're going to put some of that on YouTube, right? We filmed it. And I mean, it almost looks like the set of Ellen or something. Like
we'll have some clips up there and shorts about it.
Yeah, I mean, like it was a really nice setup. Their library was really beautiful. this is something like many studies that should be studied much further and much more in depth, and needs money from some like millionaire or billionaire out there, maybe someone who lives down the street from these guys. To
Rosie, you're listening.
Knock, knock. You could basically roll a proposal down the hill and it would bounce up against her wall or something. But like really, not just this, but any kind of ailment that needs clinical trials, it like they said, it is very expensive because you need human guinea pigs for one that are willing to do this experiment, and they're going to either get a CBD or placebo, and you need people that have the different ailments that are willing to do it, and then you need a company that is willing to pay for it. And so you have to pay for the doctors and the what do they call them? It's not trainees, something like that. You need to pay for the people who are going to monitor them and monitor the results, make sure everything is clean, make sure everything's accurately detailed and recorded, and then repeat the process with another group to make sure that it wasn't just a fluke. And then you also need the product. So you need like CBD or THC. So you need some company throwing out a lot of money to have these people test with their samples of their product. So we're putting the call out there to any philanthropists who want to help massive communities out there who are going through issues. Just would take someone with $1 million to throw into a study about arthritis and all these joint issues. I mean, you're seeing there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I mean, this is a small sampling of the actual community in America alone that could benefit from knowing what could be prescribed or what someone should take to help with what they're dealing with, what kind of pain they're going through. Like I said, a bulk of the people who participated in this, it was because of pain. That was their major issue, pain. And if CBD and THC, especially if you work with, tandem, if you entourage these two, what kind of efficacy that could have. It's just, we need the studies. We need to study further. So if you out there are a CBD company thinking about like, oh, we could donate a shitload of CBD to this. And when CreakyJoints does an actual study, we'd have our name on the fucking actual results of a scientific study about arthritis. And now our CBD brand is completely part of that study and will always and forever be in the history books as the brand that helped figure out this one thing, which could change medicine forever. Hey, go for it. Like, why not?
Yeah, I mean,
make the call. It's CreakyJoints.org. Get in touch with them. And, or if you're just a philanthropist who wants to throw some money into it and have your name on the study, do that too. Cause like, there's a lot of people out there in pain, especially, older people, but I mean, there are a lot of people younger that are getting arthritis at early ages. Throw some money into it and see what happens, because maybe we can figure some stuff out and help some people get out of that pain that they're stuck in.
Like the ankle one.
Hey man, that's like 5% of the people, so that's no joke. A lot of people out there with that exact condition are like, fuck you, Ryan. Well, thanks for taking that trip over there with me, Ryan, filming and being a part of this adventure. It was a good trip. And thanks to the guys at CreakyJoints for inviting us into your mansion. What's another good mansion name?
Big ass house.
What other famous mansions are there? The Playboy Mansion.
There's the CreakyJoints mansion.
The CreakyJoints mansion. I think the CreakyJoints mansion is like, it's like the Playboy Mansion for people with arthritis. Like if you have arthritis and you someday get to the CreakyJoints mansion,
then you made it.
You made it. Pretty cool. All right. Any last thing you want to say to the gang, Ryan? Any updates on the Cannabidiet?
Absolutely. Stay tuned for the Cannabidiet YouTube channel coming very shortly. We're going to start filming in a couple weeks.
Right.
Got a lot of dishes set up. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to bring in a dish for the office. We can try some meal here. The book is almost finished. So we got you some Cannabidiet chef coats. Yeah, we got the chef coats, which look
awesome.
Look
fucking dope.
you guys want to see them, well, tune into the show, and you will. So we want to thank John for that one, actually.
Right.
You know. But yeah, stay tuned for the book. Stay tuned for the show. Stay tuned for little recipe tips and tricks on the Instagram page.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the Instagram, we just launched that recently. It's _Cannabidiet. THE_CANNABIDIET. It's like Cannabidiet, like cannabidiol. CBD stands for cannabidiol. This is a diet with cannabidiol. The Cannabidiet. Pretty easy. Easy to remember. And we made it up, so. And we also have the .com, so one day thecannabidiet.com will take you directly to all the Cannabidiet stuff, but right now it's just a floating page of nothing.
We're getting there. We're working hard.
Right. And if you haven't already subscribed to CBD Source Podcast on Instagram, and please, if you haven't already and you use an iPhone or have a Mac, go to the Apple Podcast, go to iTunes or go to the Apple Podcast app and subscribe to CBD Source Podcast. Give us 5 stars, write a little review. We'll be forever grateful. Check out our Reddit page, thecbdgang.com. That's what we call all of you guys listening at home. You're part of the CBD gang, just like us here, all of us working on this podcast religiously. Thecbdgang.com will take you right to the Reddit page. We're starting to really be active with it. We're making it our message board. Like, that's our official message board. We'll post stuff that's going on in the show. If we have any questions that are coming up for episodes that we haven't launched yet, maybe you can chime in. What else we got here? Our phone number, 1-833-CBD-GANG. That's 1-833-223-4264. Give us a call. You can leave a 3-minute voice. I almost said 4. You don't get 4 minutes. We only give you 3.
No.
3 minutes and it cuts your ass off. So if you can leave a story in your 3 minutes, we might play it on the show. If you have a good first smoking weed story, we were talking about this a couple episodes ago, Rye. You weren't in here, but we were talking about our Weed Man van. Do you have a Weed Man van story? Like, our joke is that everyone's got some story with a weed man and a van, but maybe not a van, but a weed man or maybe a weed woman. Someone turned you on to weed, and you have that first experience, either in a shitty little ramshack house, studio, a fucking pimped out ass apartment. Who knows? There's some backstory. What's your first experience? Give us a call, 1-833-223-4264. That's 1-833-CBD-GANG. We want to hear your Weed Man story, and maybe we'll play it on the air. Rye, what's your Weed Man van story?
You're going to have to find out, but it consists of me, 3 guys, 1 girl, and an El Camino. Use your imagination.
Oh, shit. Maybe
Nothing bad.
Maybe in the future we'll hear that story. All right, gang. We'll see you. I messed it up. We'll CBD you next Tuesday.
Give the show a call at 1-833-223-4264. That's 1-833-CBD-GANG.
The CBD Source Podcast is written, produced, and hosted by Cheney. Additional voice, camera, and web production by Ryan Weber. Graphic design and artwork by John DiGian Tommaso, Kevin Bierfeld, and Cheney. Marketing by Penny Spinazzola. Special thanks to our resident CBD guru, Akash Patel, and our in-house CBD vape expert, Anthony Maltese, as well as our personal CBD chefs, Ryan Weber. Additional thanks to Tasha, Kevin, Liz, Steve, and Ryan for lending your vocal talent. And a thank you to our CBD fitness expert, Danny. I'm James Lazos. This is my one job on the show. To wrap it up, I'm the wrap-up guy. You know what the funny thing about Europe is? It's the little differences. Like in European languages, CBD is still CBD, but they pronounce the letters differently. That is fucking wild, man. Want to be a guest on the show? Call us at 833-CBD-GANG. Again, that's 833-CBD-GANG, and leave a message with your contact information, and we'll get back to you right away. Visit us on CBDSourcePodcast.com for all the links to your social media. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.
All information in this podcast or its related social media pages and interactions are for informational purposes only. The CBD Source podcast does not offer medical advice. Its host, Cole Cheney, is not a medical professional. His experiences with cannabidiol and other cannabinoids are his own and may not affect you the same way. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is different. The statements made regarding CBD products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The efficacy of these products and the testimonials made have not been confirmed by FDA-approved research. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All information presented here is not meant as a substitute for or alternative to information from healthcare practitioners. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product. The Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires this notice.
Thank you for listening to the CBD Source podcast. This is how we CBDo's it.
The Bristling.
And now a titrate up math lesson from Cole Cheney.
That's why it's confusing, because it's like, wait a second. If 93% of people who tried CBD said it was working for them, then how the hell are 41% of CBD users who stopped did so because it didn't see a change in symptom relief? It just doesn't make sense unless they're talking about a very small number, like of the 70 people who quit, 41% of those 75 people or whatever it is quit because the CBD wasn't working for them. And the reason it wasn't working for them was because they weren't taking enough.
No,
probably.
They need to titrate up.
Seriously. Like, a lot of people had this exact problem happen with my aunt this week. My mom was like, hey, Aunt Eileen was taking 2,500 milligrams of CBD and she ran out. And then she asked me what I could recommend. And I was like, try some, I think I said CBD MD, like a 1,000 milligram. And she got it. And she messaged me back like, oh, it didn't work. Do you have any other brands? And it's like, well, how much was she taking? Because if she's used to taking 2,500 and it works, you have to take that same dose of the 1,000. So you have to, if you were taking one dropper of a 2,500, you're going to have to take 2.5 droppers. You're used to taking, can you do this math? 2,500 divided by 30.
2,500 divided by 30.
One dropper from a 2,500 milligram bottle of CBD.
83.3.
83.3 milligrams of CBD, because every time you have a bottle, whatever it says on the bottle as far as how many milligrams of CBD are in it, that's divided by, you're going to be dividing that by how many doses you're taking. And if it's a 30 milliliter bottle, one pull from that, one tink, one full dropper is 1 milliliter, and there are 30 milliliters. So you divide the full contents of the bottle by 30, and since it's a 2,500 milligram bottle, it's 83.3. So if you decide to get a smaller dose bottle of 1,000, now you're dividing 1,000 by 30 because there are 30 droppers in that. And how much would that be?
33.3.
33.3. So you're taking a much smaller dose per dropper. You have to think about this math. Like, you would need 2.5 droppers. Yeah, 2.5 droppers to get the same efficacy of one dropper of a 2,500 milligram CBD bottle. So that's where she fucked up. And she's blaming the CBD, and it's like, it's not the CBD. You're just not
CBD's fault.
You're not taking enough. I'm like, it's a molecule. Like, it's not a bad version of the molecule. Their stuff is pure. It's got that much CBD in it per dropper. You just need to take the right amount to equal what you were taking before. If it's tricky when you switch bottles and switch dosage. And always titrate up. If it's not working for you, take more, and then the next day take a little more, and until you finally get that feeling that it's working. And then you take a little more, and then if it's working better, then you take a little more, and then eventually you'll hit a point where it's not working any better, and it'll actually start working probably worse if you keep taking more beyond that. So that's when you back off, you titrate down to the right dose, you've hit your sweet spot, and that's how you know that you're taking the right amount of CBD. Anyway, this was fun. Good little math lesson there. I sucked at math in school, but somehow with CBD, I'm like a math whiz. I think it has like drug dealers who know exactly how much weight things are. I'm like learning the measurements of titrating up. Anyway, thanks, gang.
Who knows, man? If the podcast keeps continuing to grow like it is now, dream big, dude.